organization that recently has been formed called Immersive Technology and Entrepreneurship Labs by a number of well-known industry persons in the country trying to do precisely that and trying to solve 3-4 days they get completely submerged. Is it possible to really solve the effort that is required? I don't think we lack scientists. I don't think we lack startups. I don't think we even lack money. But a different kind of effort of putting multiple people together, taking big problems and solving that will take us forward.
Thank you, Ashok. Well said. I'll now turn to Professor Abhay Karandikar, who has a rich experience of being in academic life. He was in IIT Bombay professor and then IIT Kanpur director, and now he is Secretary DST since October 2023. So he has a vast exposure to both sides, and of course he is very well accomplished, recipient of IEEE Essay Standard Medallion and Mozilla Open Innovation Prize. Professor Karandikar, I'll ask you, can you see how we would need specific new frameworks or funding mechanisms or incentives or some other approach which can accelerate breakthrough research within Indian institutions?
So, thank you very much. I think before me, both the panelists, Professor Rangarajan and Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala, pointed out in different ways that research is now increasingly becoming interdisciplinary and therefore requires complementary expertise from different individuals, different scientists, and that may not be available in one institutions, that cannot be in one department, that could be multiple departments, multiple institutions. And Professor Rangarajan mentioned that to be a mission, and this is being recognized by the funding agencies and the government today. For example, in the Department of Science and Technology, we have initiated many such multi-PI, multi-institution programs. One of the prime examples that was launched last year is the National Quantum Mission. And in the National Quantum Mission, we have brought together more than 150 principal investigators which are spread across more than 40 institutions in the country, which are working together in a directed mode, as Professor Jhunjhunwala mentioned, to accomplish certain objectives in the quantum technologies, and we hope that some of that could lead through the breakthrough research, as Professor Sood also pointed out. Now, it's not that the breakthrough research have not been happening in the academic institutions in India. In fact, I should say that in the recent years, the academic research in our premier academic institution has been at all-time high level compared to, let's say, 30 years back or 40 years back, when IITs were primarily concentrating on the undergraduate education programs, even the best institutions. But of late, there has been more emphasis on the high-quality research, technology development, and as Professor Rangarajan mentioned, translational research. Now, in order to translate the research into commercializable products and technologies, we need a matured industry ecosystem which can take the breakthrough research which is happening into the academic institution and convert them into deployable products and technologies. And what has happened is that while Professor Jhunjhunwala mentioned that we need a combination of the private investment, what has happened is, unfortunately, the private investments in our R&D, in cutting edge R&D, has been minimal. And this budget, as you know, that the government has announced a very bold initiative of setting up a research development and innovation fund which will be investing funds in directly in the private sector R&D, which I hope will take the cutting edge breakthrough research which is happening it in the academic institutions and convert them into the technologies. So I hope we will complete this entire loop of getting the researchers to focus on the front-end research, and then an industry ecosystem which take this research and convert that into products and technologies. And obviously, that will also lead to the newer funding models and more fundings as well.
Thank you very much, Abhay. Let me turn to my friends from corporate world, corporate R&D. We have with us Dr. Venkat Padmanabhan, who is Managing Director, Microsoft Research India, and Fellow of INAE, ACM, and IEEE. And we have with us Dr. Hari Menon, Director, India Office of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and he has been responsible for advancing India's development goals in multiple sectors such as family health, sanitation, digital financial inclusion, agriculture, and gender equality. So both of you, I will ask you to give your views on how can corporates become deeply embedded in India's upstream research ecosystem and what is holding them back. As Abhay just now said, that participation is not up to the mark. How can that be happening? So your views.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Professor Sood. I think it's an important question. I can maybe speak from my own experience, having been at Microsoft Research for more than 25 years. The lab in India was just turned 20, so we've been around for 2 decades. And although Microsoft is a global entity, is a global corporation, the research lab in India is very much set up as an entity that sits here in India, works with the local ecosystem, academia, startups, government, NGOs, and so on. And we've done that for 20 years, right? And that's really led to, idea creation, conception, creation, building systems, deploying locally. So I think that approach has really allowed us to tap into the talent that the ecosystem provides in India and really have impact. And when I speak of impact, I think there are several examples where we have worked with the government. There's a platform called Nikshay on health monitoring that came out of the lab. Digital Green, which is in the agri-information space, again a project from the lab. HAMS was a system that we worked on road safety. It has automated the driver license test in several dozen RTOs. So these are concrete examples of impact that came from having conceived and built systems right here in India. So I would say that's number one. The second thing is, when you, as someone in research, in academia or industry, when you think of having impact, right? Really, I think your ambition should be, maybe there should be a room of people like this on the other side of the world, and they're busy discussing your work. That is impact, right? So you've done something so important that it is worthy of their time to discuss it, to adopt it, adapt it, copy it, doesn't matter. Essentially, you've had impact, right? So I think having that ambition is important, and I think as corporate labs, working with the ecosystem, we can certainly enable that. The third and final point I'll make is, I think none of this will really happen unless the best people are in the innovation and research game, right? And I think it's certainly been getting better, but I think we can do a lot more. And there is a very simple idea that I can mention here. We have these CSR programs, right, where companies do contribute. I think we should tweak that to also allow for a people CSR program, where companies should be able to send their employees to go and do PhDs and do research in academic institutions and count the cost of that against their CSR obligations. It's a very simple tweak to the existing rules. Unless you get the highest quality people into the research ecosystem, I think all the other efforts will have limited success, right? So those are the 3 points I would make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hari.
Thank you, sir. I'll just start by clarifying that we are a private foundation, so not corporate in that sense. We measure our impact really in lives saved, lives improved, so it's not so much from bottom line. But so the criteria we may have would be a bit different than pure private sector. I actually I'm quite optimistic about where things are at. Sir, if you'd asked me this question 5 years back, I might have had a much longer list of the challenges. But I actually feel, the line that goes, trend is your friend. So currently, I think trend is a friend for India in terms of innovation and the future potential. This year is the Gates Foundation's 25th anniversary, and we actually opted to have our global board meeting, which was happening for the first time in any country in the global south, in India. Our entire board was here in March, and the reason we wanted to get them here is because we feel really positive about the developments happening in India. That's fueling frugal innovation, which we think is tied to needs the country has. So this is not innovation that is merely an intellectual exercise. And that's a big differentiator from some of the innovation that happens in the West. Most innovation happening in India is aimed at solving problems that matter for the country. And that is a very powerful focusing mechanism. The second is because innovation in India has to be scaled in heterogeneous settings, often for populations that do not have the means to pay, it has to be cost effective. And the government, as one of the biggest levers for scaling, makes sure that cost effectiveness is not sacrificed, which means innovation emerging from India is almost uniquely diffusible across the global south. So for our foundation, those are two primary lenses for the work we're doing in India. And I think in terms of what can further accelerate the work, I would actually borrow three of the points the Honorable Minister of Science and Technology made in his speech. One is the pace. I think the last few years, but particularly the advent of AI, has brought new meaning to the line operating at the speed of relevance. We really need to adopt innovations and create systems that can respond to those changes very rapidly. I think decision-making, allocation of funds, setting priorities needs to happen much more rapidly. Otherwise, the risk of being outmoded and being left behind is there. The second is focus. Innovation has possibilities across multiple sectors, but there is a real risk, especially in government, who have to respond to lots of needs. There is that line from Shriral Shukla's book, Raag Darbari, "Kaam itna zyada hai ki sab kaam thap hai." So making sure that we don't take up so many things that nothing moves forward. I think for India, there are a few sectors where we are uniquely positioned, definitely healthcare, definitely agriculture, AI, quantum, think cyber security. And the last one is signals from the government for on the demand side. Whenever innovation happens, there is a risk that entrepreneurs, startups are taking. So ways that the government can send clear signals, as has been done in defense, for some of these other sectors that innovation happening in India has a definite market, a market that the government is actually willing to support, at least for some period, will create an element of predictability. So those are the 3 points I'd make, sir.
Yeah, thank you. We all know the success story of IT industries in the country. And behind that, there are people who have made it possible. And today we have with us, as on the panelist, Mr. Saurabh Srivastava, former chairman and co-founder of NASSCOM. And he is also co-founder of Ashoka University. And he is widely recognized for building India's entrepreneurial ecosystem. So, sir, I would like to know from you, how do we attract more private capital, including risk capital, to help the journey from cutting-edge research into innovative products, which eventually become global leaders? How can it be possible?
Thank you, Professor Sood. This iPhone is probably the best example of how an outstanding technology product can be created when government, industry, and academia work together. The key features of this phone, touchscreen, Siri, GPS, were all developed at universities that were funded by government. And same was with Google. The internet itself was created by DARPA, which was funded by the US Department of Defense. So you could well say that the US government and academia had as much of a role in the creation of Silicon Valley as legendary entrepreneurs like Stephen Jobs, and also the risk capital that funded them. Now this Jugalbandi, or double Jugalbandi, is critical for us to achieve our goals. So it's actually very laudable that the government has taken the first step in this regard and launched several schemes, missions, and now ANRF and the RDI fund. But globally, industry spends twice as much on R&D as does government. And in India, it only invests half. Now, without private sector and without private risk capital stepping in, we will not be able to convert cutting-edge research into products. And how can this change? So the first is certainly big industry has the financial and the organizational muscle to take research, convert it into innovative products, and take it to market. More deep tech focused VC funds. And the last point I'd like to make is, like many other countries have done, I think in India also, government should help aggregate demand for deep tech companies and their products. It can do so by preference in public procurement. It can do so by incentives to the private sector to use domestic technologies. And if we do this, like many countries, China for sure, have done, we will have more successes. And as we have more successes, we will attract immense amounts of local and global risk capital into the country and really move from the vicious cycle that we had a decade or two away into a virtuous cycle. Thank you.
Well said. So now actually you have heard our panelists
Sir, may I just
on
come in?
this. I would...
So may I just actually add on to
yeah.
what Sri Srivastav said, which is to make a pitch, and we are at an event that the Vadvani Foundation has hosted, so congratulations to Dr. Kela and his team. I think the role of philanthropic capital also needs greater emphasis because, as Saurabhji said, commercial capital will take risks, but risks that are likely to pay off. And philanthropy in that sense is the purest risk capital because it's not expecting financial.
And I think that's a very good intervention. I just want to add one thing which slipped my mind, which is that should happen. And certainly everybody should take inspiration from what Ramesh Vadvani is doing here today. But one of the things we could also think of is corporate CSR funds today. If we mandate that 20% of that will be used to fund research in universities or wherever we want, that's another 5,000 crores a year.
So the suggestion is that right now we cannot mandate CSR spending. So Saurabhji's point is, can we think of mandating, like R&D was not earlier in the CSR framework, which it came more recently, and now you are going one step ahead and saying, can we mandate 20% of those funds for R&D? I think excellent point, and we have our Mantrijis and all people here. Maybe this is something we should think seriously.
Then Professor Sood, my idea was that till such time as our other big corporates
Yeah.
also step up and do what Microsoft is doing, what the Gates Foundation is doing, what Ramesh Wadhwani is doing. Let's take part of the funds they are anyway giving to CSR and just catalyze this.
Yeah.
Sir, can I just say, sir, we sometimes very strongly focus on funding. Funding is extremely important, but funding alone will not make us technology leader. See, 20 years back when we started Research Park, IIT Madras Research Park, we were able to put together industry, academia, and startups, and that really played a role. I think things have shifted now. What we need is an approach where a number of scientists across the organizations work together. And I sort of say what Abhay is saying, that yes, we are trying to put together projects, but important thing is you put together a consortium and each put a separate project and do a separate activity. What we need to do is on a common activity, we need a bunch of scientists working together. Unless we find enough scientists, technology and startups working together,
No, I think
funding
that's,
alone will not solve
but
the
just to correct, in quantum mission, that's not the way. On a common thing, people have come together, for example, in quantum communication or so on. But I think it is an experiment which is being tried, and I'm sure it has a great. So I would say, I think let us see at this stage, do we feel that we need systemic incentives which can encourage moonshot research in India? Do we have already enough incentives? Do we make some incentive, or what do we do to really have a jump start? Let's not do the perturbative corrections and keep on increasing slowly. Time is not there for all this, as was mentioned 1 hour back by our leadership. So that's not that. We need to really leapfrog. How do we do that? Funding is one thing, but what are the incentives in R&D institutions, in corporate R&D, how they tie up together with academia? What is needed really? I think we need some disruptive ideas. So I would request Rangarajan, you have any disruptive idea that this should be done for academia, for example, from which you come? And then I'll take to other thing the same question. What are the incentives we can provide? So this probably.
Yeah, thank you. I think probably the single most important incentive for a moonshot project is to give it enough time. You know, that is what something which is not given in projects. You always ask for annual progress reports, annual utilization certificates, and so on. That is not going to help when you are aiming for the moon. You know, you need patient capital, and that is the hardest thing to come by. There is money, as I said, but money that is willing to wait for the results to come out is something which is missing. I think that is what has to change, in my opinion.
Abhay, with the DST experience behind you and 1 year of ANRF CEO, do you think something can be done, or is it a gone case?
No, I think I think as Professor Junjunwala mentioned, funding is not enough, and he emphasized on interdisciplinarity. But I would, and Professor Rangarajan mentioned that, you know, we should not be asking only the annual progress report or utilization certificate. But I feel that there is a even more core fundamental problem and that I think Professor Sood mentioned, that we are actually, it is absolutely true, Professor Junjunwala mentioned that funding is not the issue. There is also a problem of having a talented pool of R&D personnel. We, as a country, we really lack the quality manpower which will get engaged in cutting edge R&D. And this, I think there are so many directors and vice chancellors are there, and including Professor Rangarajan, and they will vouch that we are not getting, for example, high quality students to join the PhD programs in the cutting edge R&D, or very high quality PhD students, after finishing the PhD, to really go and venture it into a cutting edge startups, whatever be sort of the reason. So I think the R&D talent pool is extremely important, and we need incentivization to enhance and broaden these R&D talent pool. Now, of course, some efforts have been done. For example, the Ministry of Education is doing Prime Minister's Research Fellowships. That is one.
So I wanted to suggest this idea of talent. I mean, in terms of Indian origin talent, we have phenomenal capabilities around the world. Most of it is in the US. So given what's happening today geopolitically, there may not be a better time.
Dares to think for itself, act with purpose, and lead with vision. I think with this, I close this panel. Thank you once again, all the panelists, and I thank all of you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sood, and all the distinguished panelists for such a rich exchange of ideas. We now move to our next conversation, one that's at the very heart of YUGM's purpose. As we move to our next conversation with the title, How Can We Fast Track the Translation of Academic Research into Market-Ready Products, Thriving Companies, and Meaningful Job Creation? And moderating this session is Shri Aditya Ghosh, co-founder of Akasa Air and a widely celebrated business leader. From leading Indigo's rise to India's largest airline to steering end of entrepreneurial vision and public purpose. Joining Shri Aditya Ghosh, our first panelist, Shri Vineet Joshi, unfortunately will not be able to join the panel. Our panelist is Professor Shirish Kedare, Director, IIT Bombay, a leader in renewable energy innovation and sustainable technologies. He led the development of the widely adopted Arun solar concentrated series and has been deeply involved in advancing sustainable rural technologies. Next panelist is Professor Bharat Bhaskar, Director of IIM Ahmedabad. He is a recipient of the Bharat, recognized as one of the best business school directors for his transformational leadership. Our next panelist is Professor Ujjwala Chakradeo. Next, I'd like to invite Shri Rajan Anandan, Managing Director at Peak XP Partners. He is a powerhouse investor who has championed India's startup growth story. Backing over 100 startups as an angel investor, he has helped founders scale across sectors. Our next panelist is Shri Bodhisattva Sangapriya, founder and CEO of IG Drones. He is a young entrepreneur leading India's largest drone-based intelligence platform. From building the country's first student rocket team to delivering 250 plus projects across 100 plus smart cities, he is a passionate advocate for rural tech innovation. Please join me in welcoming our moderator and the stellar panel. And in the interest of time, may I please request the panel to kindly stay to the allocated time.
I think
Thank
we'll try
you.
to. I think we'll try to give some time back. So we'll jump right in. Actually, Professor Kedare, may I start with you? First of all, congratulations on your MOU. Maybe because we were talking about it in the morning, if you can kind of give your thoughts on this super hub that we are trying to create in biosciences with the Vadvani Foundation. And because that will kind of get us started to something where we are trying to see in reality some of the elements that we've been talking about since morning. Yeah, we can hear.
So do you want me to focus on something specific?
Maybe you can describe what you think the super hub will do,
Okay.
and how we link academic research to actually innovation, and then finally something which will translate to real companies and businesses.
Yeah. So of course we are at IIT Bombay working on translation research for quite some time, and translation research are two parts. One is startup, the other is industry related. And they are two different things. So we have research park and incubation center. This particular hub, of course, we are concentrating on the bio-related things. In fact, our incubation center, about 60% of our startups are in biomedical engineering side. And we are here trying to concentrate on bio-related startups, taking technology to field, translation, and that goes across instruments and many other things, digital health and other things. We already have certain centers. So we will try to actually do translation research, also give experience of interaction with doctors. Our engineers should work with doctors, understand their daily issues. So this exposure is one of the major part that this center hub will allow.
Maybe two questions. I mean, did you, when you kind of originally started off, did you particularly, like Saurabh was mentioning, pick biosciences and biomedicine as an area, or did the ecosystem kind of develop naturally, organically, because you saw some initial success? How did this thing come about?
I think it evolved. Maybe I remember about 10 years back we introduced biology as a topic in engineering first year as a compulsory topic, which was at that time was kind of resisted. At that time, and maybe sometime before, we started bioscience and bioengineering department. So there are ideas, and then of course, maybe it evolved that 60% of the startups are medical. It was not decided that 60% of our startups should be medical, but it evolved. So I think it's a natural thing when you respond to maybe needs, realities, and ecosystem. I think so.
Ashish, if I can move to you. You've been involved in education and a bunch of different transformations that we have seen in education over the last maybe 15, 20 years, 15 years for sure. Do you see, where do you see, policy enabling, some of the realities that we are seeing today? And then after that, I'm going to go to Bodhi, who's as a real life example of somebody who's, started a business. So policy enabling what universities are beginning to do. There was a lot of conversation on interdisciplinary study just a short while back in the previous panel. Maybe if Ashish, you can.
No, I think from my perspective, the two biggest policy initiatives are ANRF, and Shiv Kumar is sitting right in front of us, and the announcement of the 1 lakh crore fund, out of which 20,000 crore was allocated in this budget for the current financial year. I think both are transformational for different reasons. I think the approach that the Minister indicated and the Prime Minister as well, with ANRF, which is this private-public partnership, working on a few select areas, and doing it quite differently from the way we've done it before. I think with the 1 lakh crore fund, obviously the idea is to stimulate the deep tech startup ecosystem, to get more incubators, and also to help larger companies possibly move up the value chain in terms of research and move towards products, cutting edge products faster. So I think these two are, I think both recognize that we need to look at, the challenges that industry faces. We need to look 5-7 years ahead. And whether it's working upstream on TRL 1, 2, 3, 4 or further downstream, both these initiatives work in tandem and in mission mode to support India's needs going forward.
Bodhi, you're somebody, who started working on rockets when you were in college, eventually worked at ISRO, or were supported by ISRO, and then at a very young age actually started a business. Around drones, you've got multiple projects around the country. So you seem to have, somehow found that holy grail of actually transferring what's in classroom to actually, that journey to launching a business. And so tell us about that journey. Tell us about your own entrepreneurial journey, and where were some of the challenges and how did you come around it?
Hi, I'm Bodhi, founder and CEO IG Drones. So I'm a first generation entrepreneur. So I started I'm also an student entrepreneur. I started right out of the campus. So I started as an innovator, then turned to an entrepreneur. So Honorable PM was announcing that they will come up with 50,000 new Atal tinkering centers. So my take is on entrepreneurship in the Indian startup and entrepreneurship ecosystem is that if innovation driven entrepreneurial culture, then you supposed to be start with the tinkering innovation culture first. Because if you broadly look into the Indian ecosystem, so students actually get the exposure when they join college. Apart from that, so all, most of the Indian schools and colleges, they actually, get indulged in only the traditional academics culture. So to upskill them and to, get acquainted them with the startup and innovation culture, you need to first upskill them as an innovator, then they can actually figure out and, figure out their own journey, figure out their own problem and then jump into entrepreneurship.
And tell me, Bodhi, what worked for you? Like, how did you come out of this?
I started as an innovator. So when in the year 2013 and 14, we started building rockets. And when we told that we are building rockets, everybody laughed at us. And first year, when a bunch of first year engineering kids were building rockets in a state-run government engineering college, everybody thought we have gone mad. Our friends thought we have building some kind of Diwali rockets. My professor wanted me not to use the university lab because we were doing some mad experiments. Everybody thought we have gone mad. But we tried, we failed 100 plus times and finally we succeeded. Rocket reached to an altitude of 16,000 feet AGL and became Asia's first student rocket and got registered in Limca Book of Record and became a national news. And one fine day, Honorable PM read the news and when he read the news, he then instructed and wrote a letter to ISRO, you go figure out how these 40 engineering kids in a remote research setting in India were able to build a technology. And when ISRO visited my camp,
small town in Odisha.
It's a small town, city is called Sambalpur, it's a small town, a tier 2 city in Odisha, and we built a rocket there. And then I, when ISRO team visited, they were so surprised that we built a rocket actually in our hostel backyard without even a rocket propulsion lab. And that was so surprising for ISRO. And then the moment they learned that actually these engineering kids have actually crowdsourced the knowledge. And the director asked me, I have heard about crowdfunding. What is crowdsourcing of knowledge? So I set a target for my teammates. You have to contact at least 10 members in your Facebook friend list. You have to add whosoever has written something about space. And you won't believe we have contacted around 2,000 space scientists all across the globe just to learn the rocket building technology.
You contacted them?
Yes, we contacted, sent them all cold messages, sir, please help us to build a rocket. And this is how we build. So entrepreneurship, innovation is all about perseverance. Though it's always about, solving challenge, always about, learning on your own. You can't expect the government, you can't expect the university, you can't expect the entire ecosystem will always come forward to help you out. You have to do it first. then the ecosystem will come and ecosystem will, pat on your back.
Bodhi, if I can ask you, one is to have an idea, right? Maybe even a successful experiment, but then to take it to actual business is another long bridge to cover, right? Because I'm going to bring Professor Bhaskar straight after this. What were some of the challenges you faced, or did you have it easy in taking your idea, a successful experiment, to actually a business where customers are beginning to pay you for a product?
Actually, that is more critical and more, challenging. I think Rajan has invested in 100 more, successful startups. And if you look into the number of registered startups in the Startup India registry, so in 1 lakh startups, out of like 95% were like a startup of a website or maybe an application, because that is the easiest thing to do for a bunch of engineers. Actually, in the deep tech, entire deep tech, funding ecosystem, the grant ecosystem in the government, what they are actually funding, it's not for today. It's actually for the 10 years or 15 years, 20 years down the line. There may be a chance that a project will come. And what the professor was telling, that a patience capital is actually required. The problem with our ecosystem is that we actually, we usually don't listen to our customers. We don't listen to the market. We usually think we are great innovators. We are building, great products. We first build and then go out and try to sell. I actually built a wonderful rocket team, but I landed up in drone because I thought, so selling a rocket is more tough in India and there is no buyer at all. So drone was, there was a completely, mature market there. And when I started drone, when I entered into the drone industry, that's why whatever the experience I gained from the rocket, I choose to, venture into drone, not into the rocket.
Give me
and
a second,
the market,
Bodhi.
market is the great leader and you need to listen to the market.
Bodhi, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Professor Bhaskar, I mean, I think every, session I've taken in any management school, it's always like, think about the customer, what the customer's needs are, and then build a product, right? So this is the challenge that they are facing. From a business school perspective, and I don't know what the statistic is, but I'm guessing that a large bunch of your students these years are wanting to do their own startup, they want to become entrepreneurs. Where do you think is the skill gap? Where do you think a role of an IMA and other business schools come in to take these ideas, these deep research ideas, to translate them into real businesses, real jobs, real companies?
Thanks, Aditya. I think before I get into answering your precise question, I thought I'll put what Bodhi was already talking about, that market fitment, etc., and so on. The great ideas and research is one issue. That coming up with something which is a technically highly advanced or getting into a technology which is ahead of everybody else is one part of it. But translating that technology into a viable product or converting it into a successful business or a commercial enterprise is a different ball game. It's a multidisciplinary ball game. It's not because you have a greatest technology, you're going to succeed. If you have multidisciplinary approach, which actually requires more of a management challenge. Managerial challenges lie that trying to find the product fit with the market, which he was already alluding to in his discussion. Also talking about many of the time, products will fail because of your bad pricing strategy. Or it may fail because the timing itself was not right. Or many a time, there are founder-related issues, apart from other issues. Or the go-to-market strategy you applied itself didn't work out. But more importantly, the founder-related issues is the leadership or application of the manpower issue, which you were trying to allude to. So I'll come to that in a greater detail. But most of the time, these are the factors which make the technology fail. Objective of educational institutions, or wherever you are creating this ecosystem of successful translation of technology and taking it to a marketplace environment, has to have two aspects addressed well. One is that creating the appropriate resource persons. What are the characteristics of such appropriate resource persons? Number one characteristic is not the technology itself, but ability to understand the readiness of the technology. What level of readiness that technology is, ability to spot that technology. Second is understanding the commercialization aspect of that technology. How will I be able to translate and take it to market? So where are factors I talked about, product, pricing, etc. and so on, do come in picture. And of course, third is the entrepreneurial mindset. I may have a technology, I may have all the management wherewithal, but if I don't have an entrepreneurial mindset, I'll not be willing to and ready to take that kind of a risks. So these are the three kind of challenges. The other aspect which comes, and which was being talked a lot about in the previous session, was also about the capital. Now, deep science...
I'm going to come to Rajan after this.
Right?
He's Mr. Capital. So.
Right, but I'm not going to talk about capital when it comes to, I'm talking about a gap in the capital or where the problem lies and where many of these technology translations fail. The deep science and deep tech everybody talks about, but at early stage there are not many people to fund. Most of the funding people will come in when the technology has reached the 8 or 9 level of TRL. You ask somebody experimenting with the TRL 2, 3 and 4 technology, people are not there. Maximum you'll get a grant. But grant doesn't take you from this point to the TRL 7, 8, 9 point where people are willing to fund. So what we have done, I'll try addressing problem because at IMA we have experience of almost 20 years in successfully launching ventures. Over the period of learning, we said there's certain capital gap also we have to fulfill, right? And just to name a few, in the current time, Manucure, amongst others, and then there are many others, Metarex, our optical lens technology, which we are adjustable optical lens technology we are incubating. All these technologies which have picked up at TRL level 2 and 3. Even actually we may notice that Bellatrix and E-Plane also had their seed funding from IIM Ahmedabad itself.
Yeah, we're grateful
right?
for that.
Right. So much of it came from there because, so what we have done, we are incubating in our IMA ventures the funds itself. Because early stage, early funding will not come, so we have created the funds, and the funding has come from Gate Foundation, Dell Foundation, variety of ICICI Bank, etc., which takes the technology and takes the risk at level when TRL 3 or 4 level technology is picked up. And once it gets ready, then we bring the other funding agencies, etc., and so on. So in order to translate, we have to have a continuum from starting from a basic technology, bringing it to at least the level TRL 7 or 8 or 9, where venture capitalists can come in and rest of the funding can come in. And that is the biggest challenge which we face.
Rajan, you've got to solve this problem for us. As Bodhi was mentioning, and we all know this, right? You know, most of the startups are sort of near-term problem solving, and there are lots of hard problems to solve which are near-term problems. Here are things which you're working on something where it's at least a 7-8 year horizon, if not a 10 to 15 year horizon. How do you, as an investor, as a provider of capital, as someone who sees a bunch of these proposals come up to you on your desk or on your email, is there a framework that you go through? How do you kind of think about providing capital, which one to back, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Aditya, but I'll also say a few other things. Look, I think the deep tech rocket in India has liftoff, right? I think this is really important because I don't know how many of you have spent time at IIT Madras incubator. Professor Junjunwala is here. I went to MIT and Stanford, and I'm still very involved in the ecosystems of innovation there. IIT Madras is better. Okay, so I think the first thing we should keep in mind is...
Yeah, please, literally, please, if you can, go to the Tayur
I mean, how many of you have been to IIT Madras incubator?
And to the Tayur
there's like 6 hands that went up.
Incredible.
Professor Junjunwala, you don't get to put your hand up. So I think this is really important. And Aditya, our firm, we have invested in half a dozen deep tech startups that have come out of IIT Madras. On Saturday, Sarvam became the first foundational model company that be a sovereign AI model. The Indian government made a big investment or grant to them. Our first 2 semiconductor investments companies both came from IIT Madras. We invested in a green hydrogen electrolyzer company that actually, they didn't go to IIT Madras, they applied. They did a cold email to Professor Satya and then he incubated them in his lab. And then they moved out and went back to, and then there's a whole bunch. Actually, on Monday, we had 5 companies at our investment committee. Every Monday, we have an investment committee. 2 companies from IIT Madras. Okay, so I can't tell you, and this is really important because sometimes we sort of are looking for answers elsewhere. Actually, we have our answers right here, right? So IIT Madras, and I saw Dr. Syed here. Another one that is really world-class for life sciences is CCamp. Again, we have a bunch of companies that have come out of there. So I think the first thing, the reason I bring that up is India actually has a fair bit of capital today. If you look at our early stage funds, Aditya, about 25% of our early stage funds are now in deep tech. And I mean non-AI deep tech. Okay, we have 40 AI companies, most of them are application infrastructure companies. We have a couple of deeper companies like Sarvam. But outside of those companies, right, we have 25% of our portfolio is deep tech now. Space tech, by the way, interesting statistic for all of you. 10 years ago, India had 1 space tech startup. Today, we have 220, right? So in some of these sectors, we are beginning to really gain momentum. And I think the thing we'd like to do is we focus a lot on capital, and obviously I'll get to the capital in a minute. We need to create 10 IIT Madras CCamp-like institutions, incubators, parks, where the idea to product journey is streamlined, right? And I really believe that, and I think a bunch of things have come together in IIT Madras to make this happen. That has happened. Now, as investors look, why is only 25% of our early stage investments in deep tech, right? That's an interesting question. The reason is exactly what you said. Deep tech companies take much longer. They tend to have higher risk. They have technology risk, you have regulatory risk, you have market timing risk, right? And as a result, especially as a large broad-based fund, we need to have a portfolio, right? We need to have some companies that could scale much faster, provide early returns, and then we'll have these bigger companies. So, and then that then brings me to the second idea, which is, the previous panel mentioned this, and also Ashish mentioned this. India needs dedicated deep tech funds. Today, I would say we probably have 5, 6, 7 very, very good, small, early stage deep tech funds. Okay, and then we have a few funds. I see Celesta is here and several others. Speciale is very, very good, but it's a small fund, right? We should help these funds scale up significantly, and we should also help create new funds, because those funds will only invest in deep tech. They should be structured as longer horizon funds, and so on and so forth. So I think that's the second. And then lastly, just to answer your question, look, at the end of the day, as venture capitalists, what we look for, whether it's a deep tech company or let's pick a consumer internet company, is roughly the same thing, right? We're looking for extraordinary founders. In deep tech, they happen to be technical. Actually, I run our seed program is called Surge. Our last cohort of Surge, Aditya, we had 12 companies. 8 of them had PhD co-founders. Both co-founders, PhDs. Okay, so that's what's happening. So it's happening, but it's happening at smaller levels. So we look for extraordinary talent, and we look for very big markets, right? And that's the same thing. It doesn't matter whether it is. And last thing I'll end with is, Saurabh mentioned this on the previous panel. In deep tech, one of the things that the government can especially help with is on the demand side, okay? We invested in this extraordinary green hydrogen electrolyzer company called Nutrace. They make green hydrogen electrolyzers that don't have membranes. And we did it because of the huge, the national mission for green hydrogen. Now we have electrolyzers and we have no demand. So,
makes sense.
So now we're going to go sell to Aramco, which is kind of sad, No,
and I mean, evidence of everything that you said, like E-Plane, for example, out of IIT Madras, Special is invested in it, IMA Ventures, Satya, and building for the world, not building for India, but building for the world. Professor Ujjwala, you are leading the country's first all-women's university, right? Is that right?
Right.
And getting women into STEM at an early stage. And I've had tremendous success in bringing in more women in the workforce in some other services-based businesses, but especially in science, math, research. tell us your experience,
Right.
you know.
I'll answer your question, but I think I need to say something more about
Please.
what my co-panelists have said. Talking about startups, talking about education, research in education, it's a complete journey. And most of the panelists at the top level, at the helm of the affair of the technology and IITs. But as you rightly said, I am representing a university which is first women's university in India, largest women's university, not only in India, but in South Asia. And it's not the question of being largest, but it's the question of being marginalized. And also right now, today, we have students which are more than 85,000 girl students across India, and many of them are first generation learners.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the class and we talk about the startups and when we talk about the research, we need to have an ecosystem in the education where such ideas will not be generated but will be incubated there itself. So what I am trying to share is the ecosystem at the education university level where small ideas like Bodhisattva said, but they were found to be ridiculous at that point of time. But nurturing them, looking at them positively, for that lots of things will have to be done at the university level. And that amongst those lots of things, one of the most important idea which comes to me and which has been practiced and also experimented at SNDT Women's University is having a pre-incubation centers. We talk about startups, we talk about research. In research, we have lots of ideas and things which come. However, startups don't happen immediately or automatically. So when lots of ideas are coming up and that ecosystem has been developed, every educational campus, every educational institution, probably by policy of the government, could have a pre-incubation center which could probably be funded by any of the venture capitalists or the starter or the government or the industry. And there, through that funds, any stupid idea, any idea which can probably be discarded at the beginning should be looked at positively, and then some of those will be then taken up further, and the network of such incubation centers across till reaching to ANRF, right from a small city to ANRF. If we have such a network and supported by many things which, if you permit, we actually need the faculty members, we actually need the supporters, we actually need the people who would look at it positively. So there are many ways like hackathons and ideathons and things which will nurture these ideas, take it further, and then we talk about startups. So percentage of startups would only be 2%, 3% out of those ideas which are coming out, but rest of them will not go waste. They would be then funded up by like Wadhwanis or somebody else who would make them entrepreneurs. And small scale entrepreneurs maybe. So my students are doing it and we have tried to work it out and it works. It works.
Thank you.
It can be taken up to the entire nation.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to have one last question to all of you. One of those, is there a silver bullet or a couple of silver bullets, whether out of your own experience or, you know, from experiences around the world, whether it's the National Science Foundation in the United States or anywhere, where you think that that could accelerate this, you know, the linkages, the continuum between lab to jobs or labs to livelihoods. So I'll just go down from right to left.
I would simply say that there's a multidisciplinary approach where IIT, IIMs and other places where the deep research is happening as well as those who know how to translate into a commercial venture. If they come together and create these continuums of the innovation hubs, probably will be more successful.
Fabulous.
The other thing simply I would say that also they need to come together in creating this kind of a manpower which values the research and understands what is the research readiness for the market is, and then is able to take the entrepreneurial risk along with that. So a collaborative approach of high technology institute and high translational institutes coming together will be very great. It will be a great thing for India to be in this plane.
Completely agree with you, yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree to that. I'm also going to add one point, but I'll just give an example that IIT Bombay researchers in bio and doctors coming together gave rise to a CAR-T cell technology, which is a maybe 1/10 cost cancer treatment, and we have actually rolled out, and almost 200 patients have been treated in last year without any labs. So this is just because the researchers going to hospitals, talking to doctors, and this coming together across is very important, and that will lead to exposure and success. But other critical input I feel which is necessary is we need engineering support to actually productize the ideas. We are good in science of technology, but we need engineering support, which is not just project-based 2 years, 3 years, but it's a common pool of engineers and a mechanism to work out, to discuss with industry, engage with maybe government also. And this mechanism typical institutes lack. And this may be a critical input needed to take the research from lab to field, and this is, I think, very important for us.
Ashish?
So I would say two things. One is go a little bit ahead of what Rajan is saying, and actually saying that we need research parks across maybe 30, 35 universities, starting with the leading government ones, but I think also some leading private institutions as well over a period of time. And this is over the next 5, 7, 8 years. But they need to have the right leader. They need to have the right ecosystem. I visited CCamp recently after many years, and I was surprised that they've nurtured 500 startups over, their journey. Obviously, some fail, but the amount of money that they put in is tiny relative to the money that these organizations have raised. So I don't think it'll be that expensive to get this up and running. A second is really this idea of stimulating the deep tech VC ecosystem. We need 100, not just 5 or 6 deep tech funds. I think government can play a role like YUGM did in Israel in stimulating this. The key will be to go and find the right people to back. So I think being much more proactive as opposed to just a call for proposals. China, as you know, has these guidance funds, both at the federal government level and at province level. The guidance funds over the last decade, and there are many of them, raised $500 billion that went to create the deep tech startup ecosystem in China, and also supported leading industries and leading enterprises that now spend $10, $20 billion individually on R&D. So I think a big push in terms of resources at central level, state level, to get this ecosystem going of deep tech VC funds, but also backing certain enterprises in certain sectors through research-linked incentives as well.
Thank you. Professor Ujjwal?
Yeah. Apart from all these things, I come back to the academic campuses and curriculum development. Like with national education policy, we have seen there is a tremendous change, definitely, but apprenticeship embedded degree programs is something which, if made mandatory, and on 22nd of April this year, few days ago, government of Maharashtra issued a GR for apprenticeship embedded degree programs, in which 6 months would be mandatory for the students to spend in the industry. So when they are doing so, they are being paid for that, but that time could be utilized by the faculty as well as students to do some research for the particular industry. So the strengthening of this tie-up of industry and academia, not only through internships, not only through on-job trainings, but through apprenticeships, and maybe going to the other extreme, that the entire degree, like 100%, of their time, if spent
in
in the industry itself and monitored by the faculty to look at their outcomes and the learning outcomes, then probably some ideas could be generated and the research meaningful and would be then taken up. Moreover, many ideas of the national importance could also be generated through these things. So mission mode, I agree with that also.
Rajan?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Ashish said, more the better. But currently we have 2. It'll be great to get to 10. I'd say the one idea would be, MIT has Engine, which is the world's best deep tech incubator after IIT Madras. They have $1 billion fund. So I think it's time that IIT Madras raises $1 billion deep tech fund for the IIT Madras incubator. I don't know who's here from IIT Madras. They should go find the IIT Madras grad, who's a world's top 5 investor. I saw me, by the way.
The alumni.
Let me go there. I think that's my idea.
Thanks. Bodhi, you have the last word.
I think every public challenges in the country is not actually the roadblock for startups, is actually the launchpad for startups. The moment we religiously do that, we will not just compete with the best of the world, we will actually lead the world. And the second one is like, so we are talking about, so Rajan is actually putting a lot of emphasis on creating IIT Madras incubator. So it's the country needs more and more IIT Madras incubator. The government should, at least the MOE should actually come up with a structure, the framework that how the IIT Madras framework can be replicated throughout the country. And in the similar line, in the government department, what Ministry of Defense through IDEX Innovation Challenge, inspired from the DARPA Innovation Challenge, has done is really remarkable. The government has actually procured thousands of crores of startup innovations, right from the startups ideation stage to product development, then direct procurement. So we call it like moggers to market. The entire journey the government has actually supported. Let government be the first funder, then the first user and the first believer of the startup idea. Actually, that will encourage more and more entrepreneurs to get into deep tech and do that religiously. In the similar manner, the corporate, I think instead of co-creating and co-doing something with the government, they can also do independently. They can actually, incubate ideas, to solve their own challenges. I think Vedanta and other corporate houses has also tried, but it needs to be done in a scale. And
Thank you,
that's
Bodhi.
all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks you for such a speed panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all the distinguished panelists. Ghosh sir, I inadvertently called you Josh, but I must say the session was indeed full of Josh. Okay, now moving on to our final high-impact dialogue of the day. Strengthening government, academia, industry, collaboration, a critical partnership for unlocking India's innovation potential. This session will be moderated by a man who's seen it all, across enterprise, transformation and impact, Shri C.P. Gurnani, a titan of Indian industry, former CEO and MD of Tech Mahindra, who steered Tech Mahindra's global transformation, co-founder of Alan OS, and a visionary with over 4 decades of leadership across technology, education and national strategy. Unfortunately, our first panelist, Dr. Rajesh Gokhale, Secretary to the Department of Biotechnology, will not be joining us for the panel today. So joining Shri Gurnani, our first panelist, Professor Manindra Agarwal, Director of IIT Kanpur and a globally acclaimed computer scientist. He is best known for his groundbreaking work on the AKS primality test and is a recipient of prestigious honors including the Padma Shri, the Godel Prize, the Infosys Prize and the Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar Award. Our next panelist is Professor Yogesh Singh, Vice Chancellor, Delhi University. He is a thought leader in education reforms and academic excellence. A senior academic leader and chairperson of the National Council for Teacher Education, he is a prolific researcher in software engineering with over 250 publications and 23 PhD supervisions. The next panelist is Dr. Shiv Kumar Kalyanaraman, CEO of the Anusandhan National Research Foundation. Formerly CTO for Microsoft's energy industry in Asia, he's an IEEE Fellow and ACM Distinguished Scientist. Our next panelist is Dr. Manish Gupta, Director of Google Research India and Infosys Foundation Chair Professor at IIIT Bangalore. A globally recognized technologist, he has led cutting-edge innovation at Google, IBM, Xerox, and Infosys, which earned him the US National Medal of Technology and Innovation. Our next panelist is Srimati Anita Rahman, partner at Celesta Capital and a seasoned investor in clean tech, edtech, and consumer internet. With deep cross-border expertise between the US and India, she's held leadership roles at Global Silicon Valley, been an investor at Vantage Point Capital, and led an e-commerce startup as a CEO. Our final panelist is Sri Shekhar Sivasubramaniam, CEO of Vadvani AI and a seasoned technologist with 4 decades of global experience. From research at Carnegie Mellon University to scaling billion-dollar tech ventures, he's been at the forefront of applying AI for social impact. Let's give a warm welcome to the moderator and a panel.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, clearly, the organizers knew right in the beginning that this panel will be the most interesting, so they gave us only 30 minutes. And they also knew that we are holding you guys back from the lunch. So, I'm going to actually take off from the conversations that we have heard from the earlier panelists, the conversations that we have heard from the speeches of the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister for Science and Technology, Honorable Education Minister. There was this common themes running around that, Hari said, India performs well when we are in a mission mode. Saurabh Srivastava spoke about India's opportunity to get talent from overseas. He obviously was only reflecting to the Indian talent coming back. I know in one of the conversations I've had with Anita Rahman, she has spoken about the talent parity, and she's obviously better suited to talk about that, having lived her life on the plane or between Silicon Valley and India. And similarly, all of us, I think, were given an overdose of IIT Madras, IIT Chennai. So I think we have other educational institutes out here who are doing some exemplary work. I'm surprised that people, when they spoke about innovation and India's showcase, they did not talk about Digi Yatra, which each one of us uses. They did not talk about the Chandrayaan 3, or they did not talk about India setting new standards in digital payments. But the good news is, we have a lot more success stories to share. So I'm going to actually change the structure here. I'm going to ask a common question, which is usually asked towards the end. I'm going to ask the question right up front. If India Incorporated is equal to people, and if people is the real differentiator, do you think our talent is ready to deliver many more deep tech projects, many more innovation projects? Will people be a challenge, or will people be an opportunity? So Anita, since you are the only one who has formally written on people parity, talent parity, why don't you start?
Sure, happy to. Thank you for having me. So I'm with Celesta Capital. We're a deep tech venture capital fund that was founded in Silicon Valley over a decade ago. So we were in deep tech before deep tech was cool. And we're very thankful to Mr. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA and Elon Musk to make our area of investment very exciting these days. And so one of the reasons we have expanded into India is because we actually do believe that India is at an inflection point for deep tech, and we're very excited to be here. One of the things that we see, as they mentioned on the other panels, is the government coming together with the policies, ANRF, with the funding of the 10,000 crore fund, academia and all of the research that's happening at IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, and all of the other places, CCamp, etc. We're very excited with that. And the third leg, which CP just mentioned, is talent parity. And so one of the observations that we've had is that with the advent of the GCCs into India, what we're seeing is that the 1.9 million employees there, that include about 300,000 semiconductor engineers, hundreds of thousands of software engineers, including AI engineers. They're all being trained at the level of an MNC R&D organization, or MNC. And so we're seeing talent being trained at rates and at levels that was unprecedented. You don't need a Harvard or a Stanford in India anymore, and I think we've kind of leapfrogged that. So we're hoping that what happens here, and we're actually predicting that what will happen here is like a Fairchild Semiconductor event that happened in Silicon Valley, which is that people will start to leave these big organizations and start startups, and they're trained by the best in the West. And we are here with our capital because we foresee that that will happen soon, and we're ready to fund that.
Sure, thanks, Anita, thanks. I want to flip it to Shekhar. When you put in, empowering the youth, when you look at Vadhvani AI, what do you think, Shekhar, is a restraint or a bottleneck for us to become the AI capital of the world?
Thank you. Applied AI is actually completely about living in the wild and implementing AI in communities. So we've been doing this for 5 years, and for us, the problem is kind of reversed. You have to do deployment first thinking. That means you should have the capability to identify a problem with a certain amount of specificity, and then have the conviction to validate it relatively quickly, ensuring that you reflect the usage, the community aspects, the government regulations, the overall construct of making it effective and meaningful in what it's being used for. We've got 25 solutions from our institute, Vadhvani AI, which today touches about 10 crore people. So our mission is to make sure that by end of 26, we have maybe 40 to 50 crore people at least having experienced one inference. So when you're in that world where you place the highest amount of importance to application and not the technology, we're all technical people, we have all programmed, I program even now, but you have to shift your focus away from getting excited about your technology into understanding what is usable in society. That's somewhat similar to, if I was to use a simple analogy, if you have a socket on the wall, really what you're interested in is, should I put a bulb into it or should I put a heater? But if I was to explain to you Ohm's law and tell you how I wired it and why I used copper of a certain thickness, that's a distracting conversation and of no relevance for most people. So applied AI is about user first, deployment first, getting it done. Then you back into the design constructs that you need to put into place to make it happen. In this lies the conundrum and the complexity of the types of talent you need in individuals to be successful. Often we are taught the theory, and at some point through a variety of things that happen in life, you may accidentally reach an application. when you flip it around and force people that you've got to be able to think today as to how it's going to work in society, that's a different skill set. That skill set requires a few fundamentals which we emphasize. One, no bias in thinking. Two, no excess baggage of your past. Three, complete humility of listening to the counterparty. Four, very deep sense of thinking and talent. These are not necessarily the kind of things that are either taught or even experienced by people in our community. So the transformation for us, especially an institute like ours, to be successful is the ability for the professional to be able to build these characteristics in order to ensure that in an altruistic, straightforward, direct manner, you can actually make it count. That's what is the complexity of the individuals who work in a space like ours.
Well said, well said. Manish, you know, Google research is known for anticipating the future. Google research has employed some of the finest brains in the world. Google research has a fellow programs which cuts across the boundaries. Tell me, number two, what would you call success? Whom would you, other than Google, emulate? And number three, what's your experience in talent development?
Yeah, so in my view, talent is not the problem for us in India. I think we have amazing talent. I think what we need more of is, you can call it ambition, guts, the boldness to do things that have never ever been done. And this is an area where at least I look to the space, ISRO, and then a lot of these space tech startups that we have seen as an inspiration, because they have truly done things that have never ever been done. I would like to see more of that happening in other areas, like especially AI, which is such a critical technology, which is going to transform every industry. Because AI, I've been very disappointed, right? I mean, we have kind of been waffling, can India really afford to invest in these foundation models and so on? And ultimately, it took, a DeepSeek from China to have us develop the conviction that yes, indeed, we should build. Okay, der aaye durust aaye, but I think we should be willing to do things that have never ever been done before. We should have those guts. And if you talk about, again, like proof of the pudding, right? If I look at my own team, some of the most pioneering work, I mean, we took this theme of how do we develop AI in a truly inclusive manner, which led to work on making these AI models support diversity of languages, cultures, starting with Indian languages, then making them very efficient, because we wanted these AI models to be able to run on these digital devices, mobile phones, right, which are the only digital device. It led to, again, work on making these models far more efficient, which has been a multi-billion-dollar problem. So today, one of the co-leads for the next generation of Gemini, the Google's frontier model, he sits in Bangalore, in my team. And again, to your point, the point that you were making, yes, he has been getting calls from VCs and co-founders that, why don't you do a startup? And again, at some point, right, I mean, I'd love to have these people go on and do these startups, but I think we have to be willing to take those risks and be willing to fail, be willing to do things that have never ever been done before. And the rest, I think, will follow. There's no shortage of talent.
Again, Professor Agarwal, Rajan made a point, 25% of the ventures that they fund is deep tech. Yeah, you probably, when you go across and meet the young students and entrepreneurs, you probably end up doing 100% deep tech. Now, the question is, really, are entrepreneurs trained? or entrepreneurs thrive because they are at IIT Kanpur? Or what is the magic that IIT Kanpur has created so many entrepreneurs?
I think the main magic is in the people. The students we get are outstanding. What we do at the institute is help them along. We don't stifle them. We encourage them to explore their limits of their abilities and even go beyond it. And we facilitate that. And that, as you rightly said, that we encounter a lot more deep tech startups than normal ones. And we do feel that in the Indian ecosystem, there is a requirement to, and this is one pointed out by earlier speakers also, to focus on the deep tech space, because there is a need for a special way of managing them, because there is a longer gestation period in this area. And I hope that as things are progressing, we will get there.
Again, Professor Singh, you run one of the most well-known universities in India, and you are also multidisciplinary. Where do you see pockets of entrepreneurship, and is there a pattern, is there any data, or is there something that, you know, Vadhvani Foundation or Vadhvani Innovation Network need to do with you to nurture innovation and entrepreneurship?
Thank you and good afternoon to all of you. You have rightly said, what do we in a university expect from industries like Vadhvani Foundations? And you know, the topic here is also very interesting, strengthening the government, academia, industry collaboration. So all these three entities are very, very important. Here the question is, which is very important, when it comes to trust and respect between government and higher education institutions, there are no issues, there are good number of success stories. For example, from Delhi University, government has asked us to develop a joint project, a ERP, which is known as Samarth. And I'm happy to share with all of you, more than 10,000 institutions, higher education institutions of our country are on Samarth. University is providing services to the entire country of 10,000 institutions at least right now. So there is no issue. But when it comes to the third entity, which is more important, industry, there is also an issue of mutual respect and trust. Why I am saying this? There is an issue of mutual respect and trust. Industry first reaction, most of the time we see your students are below standards. First of all, as a vice chancellor of a university, it is very difficult for me to digest this statement of many industries. We are having bright students, bright faculty members doing very good in their own domain. But we have to now, first we have to strengthen this respect and trust between industry and a university. What is happening, our teachers and students are trained for what? They are satisfied after publication of a good research paper or a patent. That is 50% journey. But now everyone is talking about, rightly so also, that is what? Prototype to product to commercially sustainable products. This is a new thing for universities. Now we are working very hard on this subject also, and you will see a difference in universities within couple of years, because this requires change of mindset. Because we have good number of research excellence also, but every university should identify few thrust areas. Some may environment, some may climate or whatever. Then industry should, what we are expecting from the industry should establish their R&D research laboratories in university. Then their industrial scientists should work there. Our teachers should work there. PhD scholars will work there. And we have bright students. They can work as an intern in the university. That ecosystem will help not only the academia but also industry. Right now we don't have many success stories in those areas, but I'm very hopeful that time will come where industry will also be open. Government is already open about it, and we are also ready to go to the industry or they come. So we may start joint certificate courses for the industry or diploma courses for the industry, either in the industry or in the university. So there are many things which are to be explored, and I'm very hopeful that now things are changing at a very fast pace. Good results will come in coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Singh. I think a very, very important point that industry cannot sit on the shore and comment till they come and participate with the university and they've set up their own R&D facilities, and data has proven that people who have collaborated with the academia have been able to get frugal innovation. Number two, tap into a vast pool of talent. And number three, I think is it will create a new paradigm for India. Shivkumar ji, you have been part of this mission, one of the most important missions that the Prime Minister has outlined, and you have made impact in, some of the emerging sectors. How do you identify the challenges? How do you bring in the pool of resources? Do you want to share with us the journey of ANRF up till now?
Okay, thank you. So I've taken on my role just a little bit over a month ago. So our work is evolving, and I'm building on the great work done by my predecessor, Abhay Kandikarji, as well as, the ANRF is not a new concept. It's been, originally it came as part of the National Education Policy, which came into force in 2020. Thought of as a National Science Foundation for India, and then subsequent ideas that, have been incorporated so that we do not only broad-based support for basic research, basic innovation, but also more directed, research and innovation like, inspired by entities like DARPA and others. So, so the Act envisages ANRF as an apex body for research and innovation across all stakeholders, but with a special responsibility towards our university ecosystem, right? So, so as I take on this particular role, and the way I think about ANRF and funding is, one is a horizontal mission of, strengthening our basic research, basic sciences, applied research, and so on, in an NSF-like fashion, and then obviously our basic innovation ecosystem for deep tech and so on, for our startups and so on. So that is one class of things we would do, horizontals. And then in terms of vertical research, vertical missions, or vertical deep challenges, whether it's in the topics of AI for science and engineering, or for other vertical sectors such as health tech, med tech. There are many, many candidate missions, and we have just recently launched a Maha mission on electric mobility. That's just the first of it. And capacity building beyond our core set of institutions towards, and having different frameworks for broadening the research ecosystem, right? So these are the various things, but when we think in 2 or 3 terms. One is how do we support projects and research projects and programs. Second is we are looking at people. How do we drive a lot more people exchange? There's been a lot spoken about, industry and academia and so on. I think, or even collaborations between various entities, breaking silos. I mean, all of this, for a precondition for this is for people to move from one entity to the other. So we'll be looking at various sorts of people and people-related programs. And finally, around infrastructure, a large part of our funding goes towards infrastructure in CapEx and so on. We are going to think more holistically about looking at the entire life cycle of infrastructure. And, I used to work for Microsoft before. We know how to build clouds and things like that. So how do we think of, infrastructure and better sharing of infrastructure across the entire value chain? So when I think of ANRF, we have multiple objectives and goals. One is the horizontal mission, then the other is more vertical and targeted mission, and then all of this is a feeder for the bigger investments that are there in the 1 lakh crore fund, such as the RDI fund and so on and so forth, right? So it's important for us to think, we can't just say, I want one but not the other. You will not have a feeder towards the other and so on, right? So our goal is to find that right balance and make sure we do capital allocation across each of this. But at the same time, we want to, it is not just the amount of capital that we put in or how we put into these areas, but how we drive the collaboration that leads to better impact, better outcomes. So we'll be spending a lot more time. Of course, we have to do a lot of things to drive ease of doing research and getting the money out and so on, which have been pain points for the community. But we will be focusing a lot on how to drive collaboration between all our stakeholders, how to drive people mobility and the preconditions for collaboration. And then as part of that, things like co-funding, what we are doing with the Vadvani Foundation and what we hope to do with many other partners, is to bake in a sense of skin in the game, collaboration, and work towards better outcomes together in an all of government, all of society manner, right? So those are the sort of principles I'll state, which is what we intend to do.
Okay, guys, I mean, I'm conscious that we don't have a common question because we started with a common question. So I'll have one question each, and since we have only 5 minutes plus left, my request is try and be precise. Dr. Yogesh Singh, when you spoke, you talked about industry coming and setting up labs in the university. I have a reverse question. What incentive policy would you encourage for the faculty and the students to go and attract the industry to come and set up labs with you?
Both have to work together. In universities, now we are incentivizing many steps which a faculty is expected to take. Research incentives, university is also funding. But when industry will come here, first of all, when we decide a particular area, industry related to that area should come in the university. We will provide them the bright minds facility. They will also help us. So this joint venture will create something really good for the industry and for the country. But what is happening, we are taking I have few experience. One industry will say, okay, they don't have anything, we should give them something. So we will give you 100 laptops to the universities. Under CSR, their job is done. Physical infrastructure is only one aspect, giving things. But research is a very serious business. We need 100% commitment from industry and our research scientists. Industrial research scientists and university research scientists should work under one roof. Then things will change, or industry should establish and our people can go there on deputation for a long period of time. So that type of, when we say strengthening bridges, such steps are essential for mutual benefits. But before that, there is a trust deficit. I am seriously saying that there is a trust deficit. So industry leaders should also keep in mind, when they say your product is below standard, please don't say. That may be for your industry, it may not true for everything. And there is a difference between education and training. That should also, we all should keep in mind. Because if a student is not trained on a particular technology, it doesn't mean that that student has no relevance in the entire technology spectrum. No, that is not true. So this mindset should also change. Although faculty and students are ready for the industry, industry has to take a call on the subject.
Thank you for re-emphasizing the trust point. Professor Agarwal, everybody talked about IIT Madras success stories. What would you say are IIT Kanpur success stories? Are there one or two that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, sure. I think IIT Madras has done very well, as have several other institutions in the country. I just want to point out one very recent technology that was developed and transferred. This was in gene therapy space. One of the faculty members has developed a sequence of molecules in gene therapy for critical diseases, and it has reached a human trial stage and been licensed to the Loris lab for taking it forward. So that we believe is a very important step or progress that our faculty have made, and we are looking forward to its conclusion.
So good. Anita, when do you think the next tech giant or one of your investments will become a $100 billion company from India?
$100 million or billion?
100 billion.
Hopefully the one that I made last year is going to be a $100 billion company. We invested in a cancer diagnostic company. A group of scientists in Pune were able to detect 1 in a billion circulating tumor cell. This technology is not available anywhere in the world. And we had our advisor, who's a Nobel Prize laureate at Yale University, validate it, and he interrogated this team multiple times. And so it is our hope that we're taking this technology to the US to commercialize globally. So it's Indian technology for the world that would be commercialized globally, and hopefully you'll see that headline in a few years, CP.
Oh, good. Let's give her a big hand. Manish, you've seen technology all through. Professor Bhaskar from IIM Ahmedabad more or less made a point. It is not about idea to product. It is about commercial success of the product. You've seen products scaled up. You've seen products not getting scaled up. What would be your advice to all of us about scaling up a product?
So I think scaling up definitely is an issue, but I would kind of disagree with his statement. I would say in this world where technologies like AI are truly disrupting everything, right? Science, you look at things like protein folding, right? I've seen a startup, right, with 9 people come up with now new molecules for drug that they have licensed to a pharmaceutical. So I think too many times we in India have been focused on making the same things cheaper, better, scaling them faster and so on, or higher levels. But I think we need to start investing more also in truly disruptive technology. And again, in terms of enablers, I see one is universities have to be key enablers of that. And I'm very happy to see, again, deep tech startups beginning to come out of universities, right? Examples like Sarvam, which was founded by, again, a former professor. Then I think we need also industry. Indian industry kind of still spends very little of its revenues on research and development. I mean, contrast that with the likes of Google, Microsoft, and others, right, that you talked about. They spend something like double-digit percentage of their revenues are spent in R&D. Look at most Indian companies, less than 1%. No wonder that when you think about kind of the major breakthroughs, technology breakthroughs and so on, there's hardly anything that you can even talk about coming from Indian industry. You keep going to the likes of Google, Microsoft, and so on. So I think it's not so much about scaling. Let's first admit that we have to make true breakthroughs in terms of technology. And finally, I'd like to maybe propagate an idea I heard from Professor Sunita Saravagi, IIT Bombay. I mean, IIT Bombay today gets amongst the best students, right? With due apologies to IIT Kanpur director and our IIT Madras distinguished alumnus sitting over there. She says it's very hard to get those students to pursue a PhD right there at IIT Bombay. But many of these students, if they could be placed in the students and researchers, if there could be non-profit institutions similar to Vadhwani AI, but not applied AI, I think Vadhwani equivalent centers for fundamental research in AI, I think it'll be amazing to get people doing, coming up with breakthroughs in such settings and then launching startups based on the breakthroughs that they had developed in these settings. So those were a few thoughts.
Again, thank you, Manish, and thanks to my fellow panelists. I'm really honored that I had the chance to share this panel with such distinguished people. Again, I think it's a wonderful event. YUGM and the level of participation, the level of patronage, both by Honorable Prime Minister and the Cabinet Ministers, only show the commitment that we all have towards the tech innovation. So thank you, everyone. And I know we have had a 30-minute overrun, but I'm not responsible. So let's find the guy who's responsible. Meanwhile, again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. You summed it up really well. Finally, on behalf of the Ministry of Education and the Vadvani Foundation, I extend a heartfelt thank you to each one of you, our speakers, panelists, moderators, and to you, our engaged audience, for being part of this powerful platform for action. Let today not just be about insights, but about outcomes. May these dialogues continue across meeting rooms, boardrooms, campuses, labs, and
prayer. They all have their characteristics.